Today, we're taking on a request that I have to say links spirituality, history, and cognition in a really unique way.
Hmm.
We're going to be exploring how critical thinking is cultivated not in a secular classroom, but in a deeply spiritual context in Central Asia, specifically Kazakhstan.
And this is happening in what you could call a post-secular landscape. They call it Rukhani Jangharu, which means spiritual renaissance.
Right, and the goal isn't just pedagogy, it's deep foundational character building.
Exactly. After decades of Soviet influence, they're not just trying to restore dogma. They're looking for the ontological foundations, the core principles you can use to actually form a child's character.
To make them a carrier of the cultural code.
Carrier and a defender, yes.
Okay, so our source material is centered on two philosophical constructs that we really have to unpack. The first is Shah Ada Ata, and the
Right.
second is the Allah at A path. So before we go any further, let's just slow down with that first term. Shah Ada Ata, what is this telling us?
Well, linguistically, it's a brilliant synthesis. Sha'ada is a phonetic mirror of the Arabic ashahada.
The Islamic testimony of faith, La ilaha illallah.
Precisely. But by framing that testimony, the shahada, as the wisdom passed down by the Ata,
The father or the ancestor.
the father, the ancestor, and then layering the title Shah or king over it, well, the truth becomes personified. It tells the child that truth isn't some abstract idea out there. It's an ancestral inheritance, a sovereign living presence right in their own lineage.
I see. So truth is tied directly to your past, to your identity. And then what about Allah at A?
That phrase connects the name of God, Allah, directly with the ancestor, Ada Ata. So it literally means something like the path of Ada through the veneration of fathers.
Which is very characteristic of the Sufi traditions in the Mangostar region.
Deeply rooted. You see it in the names of revered figures there, Biket Ada, Chopin Ada. The path to the divine is navigated and secured through the legacy of those who came before you.
So, if the focus is on truth and ancestry, our mission here is to understand that the critical thinking that comes out of this is it's fundamentally different from Western secular skepticism.
Absolutely. It's a completely different paradigm. Here, critical thinking is defined as Furquan,
Furquan.
which means discernment. This isn't about questioning for the sake of doubt or, tearing things down. It's a strict internal discipline, a metaphysical sorting tool.
And its only purpose is what?
Its sole purpose is to separate the eternal constant from the temporary, to distinguish absolute truth al-haq from every form of illusion. It's about building a fortress of certainty in the mind.
A fortress of certainty. Okay, let's unpack the cognitive mechanism that builds this fortress. The source material says the Shahada isn't just a belief statement, but a primal source of meanings.
A cognitive template, yes.
So how does a theological phrase become a tool for binary logic?
It's basically a very ancient and sophisticated form of mental programming. The two parts of the Shahada provide a binary structure, a clean cognitive grid that the child learns to run every single piece of information through.
And the first half of that binary is negation.
Yes, nafi, la ilaha, no deity. And this is the mandatory first act of critical thought. Before you can affirm anything, you have to know how to say no.
So the child is trained to deconstruct all perceived reality, to say no to.
To anything that claims to be ultimate truth, but isn't. So you're talking about rejecting false authorities, unfounded fears, social constructs, ideologies, anything that demands absolute loyalty.
It clears the slate.
Exactly. You clear the cognitive slate first.
Yeah.
If you don't negate the noise, you can't hear the signal. The mind is actively purged of what we might call informational trash.
Mm-hmm.
And only after that do you move to the second act.
Affirmation.
Affirmation. Isbat. Ilala. Accept God.
What does that do to the cognitive function?
This is the fixing mechanism. Once the field is cleared of all the false positives, the mind fixes on the singular immutable constant, the truth al-haq. So the entire mind is trained to filter through that grid. Is this absolute truth, or is this a temporal illusion?
It's like running a strict Boolean search on reality.
With only one permissible result, yes.
What's striking is that this begins, literally, at birth, through a ritual they call the acoustic imprint, or talqin.
Yes, the naming ceremony, Azan Shakirip at Koyu.
Tell us about that.
It's a profound moment of initiation. The full Azan, which contains the Shahada, is whispered immediately into the newborn's right ear.
The right ear specifically.
The right ear. The intent is unmistakable. The very first complex sounds the person registers must be the words of absolute truth. This creates what the sources call an acoustic shield against the chaos of the world.
An acoustic shield? What is the psychological mechanism there? How does a sound pattern act as a shield?
It's the foundational code. By implanting this statement of absolute negation and absolute affirmation first, they establish a baseline linguistic structure. Any language, any idea learned after that has to align with this primal code.
It creates a vertical axis of consciousness.
Yes, that's the moment the code of the father, the Ada, is transferred as an amana, an entrusted treasure.
So the takeaway for the child from day one is that your job isn't to invent your own subjective reality.
No,
Your job is to preserve and discern the truth that's been handed down.
precisely. You're an inheritor of a framework, not an inventor of a philosophy.
This is where it gets really practical. The tradition translates the 5 theological conditions of the Shahada directly into a curriculum for critical thinking.
A curriculum for intellectual work, yes. It's what moves the child from imitative faith, taqlid, to that active certainty we mentioned, yaqeen.
And these conditions are the high-level skills.
They're the quality control checklist.
Hmm.
If the Shahada is the firewall, these 5 conditions tell you how to maintain it.
Okay, so the first condition is al-ilm, knowledge. This translates to informational literacy.
Correct. The child must know the attributes of truth. This prevents blind faith. You can't tell truth from a lie if you don't know the intrinsic qualities of truth itself.
Knowledge makes faith rational.
It does. Then the second condition, al-yaqeen, certainty, maps to the verification of data.
So moving beyond just assumption.
This is critical for overcoming Zan. Zan is speculation, assumption, rumor. In a modern context, imagine a young person seeing some sensational, unverified claim online.
Right.
They have to be trained to recognize that mental state of Zan and actively seek verifiable knowledge to reach yaqeen. Zan paralyzes your judgment. Yaqeen enables clear action.
I want to circle back to the ethics of this. The third condition is al-ikhlas, sincerity. How does that help eliminate cognitive biases?
This might be the most challenging skill. The child is taught constant motive analysis. They have to ask, am I thinking this because it's true or because it's profitable or convenient for me? It's a ruthless elimination of self-deception, separating the ego's desires from the search for truth. If you can't be sincere about your own motives, your critical thinking is already corrupted.
Then the fourth is asikt, truthfulness, intellectual honesty.
The courage to acknowledge facts, even when they're unpleasant, even when they undermine your own previous assumptions. True discernment requires integrity.
And finally, the most active form of critical thinking, al-kufr bi-takut, rejection of false authority.
This is the core of skepticism and nonconformism in this worldview. Takut is any authority, a person, an ideology, a trend that claims a sovereignty that only belongs to the truth.
So the child is trained to evaluate everything. If a social trend or a political ideology demands total loyalty but contradicts that fundamental truth,
it must be rejected. This ensures the young person isn't just swept away by the crowd. It prevents intellectual laziness.
that is a highly disciplined mental framework. We've set up the abstract blueprint, but this can't just be a thought experiment. How is this metaphysical truth, Allah, actually anchored in the child's identity through the ancestor, the Ada?
That's the al-Ada path. That's the shift from the theological to the anthropological. If the Shahada gives you the software, the Ada provides the roots, the context for action.
The child sees themselves as a link in the shishir.
The chain of generations, yes.
Yeah.
And that lineage provides ontological security. I am because my father was.
But that security comes with responsibility.
An immense responsibility. Their critical thinking is tied to their duty to follow the path of the fathers, the Adazoli. And this brings us to the sacred geography of Mangistau, specifically the complex for Adai Ada at Otpantau. It functions as an open-air textbook.
Let's focus on the symbol there, the tamga. It's an upward-pointing arrow on a shield. How does that guide critical thinking?
The Tamga basically encapsulates the mission. The arrow symbolizes niyet, or intention.
The vector of truth.
Exactly. Critical thinking isn't scattershot, it's focused. It's the intellect aimed at a transcendent goal. It's directed logic. The shield, on the other hand, is about defense.
So critical thinking as a defense mechanism.
Against chaos and lies, or fitna. In a world filled with destructive misinformation, the shield protects your inner core, your iman, from being destroyed. The mind is sharpened like the arrow, and the spirit is protected by the shield.
It's a complete system. And we also noted the monument to the mother, the Anna, which represents balance.
Yes, the Ada, the father, teaches the hard skills. Logic, law, discipline. But the Anna, the mother, imparts the soft skills you need for true discernment. Empathy, intuition, love.
So truth can't exist in a vacuum.
It can't. As the sources put it, truth without love is cruelty. Love without truth is weakness. The complete critical thinker has to master both.
So who is the historical exemplar of this synthesis? Let's turn to Becket Atta. He was a Sufi master, but also an architect and astronomer.
An enlightener. Becket Atta is the intellectual saint of this tradition. His life taught the fundamental lesson that holiness does not contradict science.
In fact, it's the highest form of worship.
It's the way you come to understand the Creator's order. His underground mosques, like the one at Auckland, are engineering marvels,
Right, with incredible acoustic precision, ventilation.
all done with traditional tools and complex calculation. When a young person studies these, they realize Becket Atta used physics, math, observation, pure reason to serve a spiritual path.
So the intellectual discipline of calculating astronomical positions or designing those structures is the act of critical thinking.
It is. True critical thinking here is tafakkur, deep reflection and observation. It's knowing the fixed laws of creation, the sunatullah, through reason. Science becomes the method for verifying divine order in the physical world.
And this knowledge is transmitted through mentorship, the relationship between Becket Atta and his teacher, Chopin Atta.
And the sacred mulberry tree, the tut, which symbolizes that growth of knowledge. It has to be rooted. Critical thinking is never formed in isolation. It requires humility and dialogue within the silsila, the chain of knowledge.
You learn from a teacher who's already walked the path.
You hacked it.
And to bring this full circle, the sources link this all back to Adam Atta, Adam as the first critical thinker and the mastery of names.
This is the linguistic anchor. At its core, critical thinking is about correct naming. Lies are just distortions of reality, calling usury help or calling vice freedom.
So the child is taught that seeking truth involves restoring things to their authentic, God-given names.
Yes, and this also involves the Shahada Adama, recognizing the sacredness within yourself, which instills a sense of dignity and unwavering ethical responsibility.
That is an immense journey. So let's summarize the final outcome for the listener. The child moves from that imitative belief to absolute self-aware certainty, yakin.
And they emerge fully prepared. They're equipped to recognize false ideologies, the Takhut, and defend the truth, using both the scientific rigor of Becket Atta's legacy and the spiritual courage of Atta's legacy.
The ultimate result is a complex alloy of identity.
It is. You have theological knowledge as your absolute reference point, the Shahada. You have genetic memory, providing rooted strength, the Atta. And you have scientific cognition, providing the practical tools. It's designed to create a complete human being.
The man with the arrow. A mind sharpened like an arrowhead, a will strong like the shaft, and a goal as high as Ot Pentau.
And they don't just think about the truth, they bear witness. They are a shaheed to the truth with their entire existence, using furqan, discernment, as their ultimate shield against illusion.
What's fascinating here is how this whole approach it fundamentally challenges the modern separation of faith and reason.
It really does. It suggests that the most rigorous form of critical thinking, one focused on objective truth, not subjective opinion, might be found precisely within a deep spiritual discipline rather than outside of it.
It certainly makes you reconsider what it means to be intellectually honest. Thank you for sharing these incredibly powerful sources with us. We encourage you to explore the concepts of Furqan and Yaqeen in your own quest for knowledge.